The Discovery Mark.
Imagine this. You're on the ancient Silk Road, heading for one of the most sacred places on the planet. It's a journey filled with jaw-dropping beauty, for sure, but also unexpected dangers. We're about to explore a harrowing brush with death at the very roof of the world, and a life-or-death choice that had to be made in the middle of the night.
You know, our story doesn't start with some beautiful sunrise. No, it begins in the dead of night in a freezing guest house in a remote Tibetan town. And this is where the entire pilgrimage almost came to a final, terrifying end. He just woke up. It wasn't a noise, it wasn't a bad dream. It was this deep, chilling feeling that something was fundamentally terribly wrong, like a silent alarm bell going off in his soul. As he sat up, the feeling hit him immediately. This immense pressure, like a huge weight, was slowly settling on his chest. Now, he'd gotten used to gasping for air at this altitude, but this was something totally new, something way more sinister. Let's just put this into perspective. 4,760 meters. That's over 15,600 feet up. The air there has about half the oxygen you'd find at sea level. So every single breath is a battle. Your body is basically in a constant state of emergency. So as he tried to lie back down, right on that edge of falling asleep, this primal instinct just screamed at him. It wasn't just about feeling breathless anymore. It was this terrifyingly clear thought: if you let yourself fall asleep right now, you are going to die. So how did he get to this point? What was really happening to him? To understand the crisis, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the beginning of the trip, to a very, very different kind of morning. The whole thing kicked off in a small settlement called Ravu, out on the massive Tibetan plateau. The air was crystal clear, and the long road to the sacred Mount Kailash stretched out ahead of them. Talk about a contrast, right? We go from the claustrophobic terror of that guest house to this breathtaking, wide-open landscape. At this moment, the world feels absolutely full of promise. And this is the goal of the whole journey, Mount Kailash. It's a holy site for 4 different religions. The main purpose of the pilgrimage is to complete the Kora, which is this sacred walk all the way around the base of the mountain. It's believed to cleanse you of a lifetime of sins. As they drive across these vast, empty plains, they quickly realize they're not alone, and they soon come face to face with some pretty formidable guardians, a living link to the ancient Silk Road itself. These are Tibetan mastiffs. We're talking about huge dogs, blacker than the darkest night. They stand guard outside the isolated tents of the nomadic shepherds. And historically, these dogs were so ferocious, they were actually sent as tribute along the Silk Road to become hunting dogs in China's imperial courts. And they are completely fearless. They just explode into action, launching themselves straight at the moving car. Their driver, a man named Satan, has to slam on the brakes and swerve just to avoid hitting this wall of fur and teeth that's dead set on chasing them away. Leaving the plains behind, the landscape just changes completely. The road starts to climb, winding its way up into snow-capped mountains. And this is where the real challenge of the altitude is about to begin. And boom, they hit their first big obstacle, a 15-meter patch of slick, icy snow. Now, the danger wasn't how deep it was, but that treacherous icy top layer. One little slip and the car could roll right over. But Tisan, their driver, he calmly gets out, grabs handfuls of dirt, and just flings it across the ice to give the tires something to grip. He just navigates it perfectly. At the very top of the pass, they reach an incredible 5,515 meters. That's over 18,000 feet. And it's right here that the altitude delivers its first real punch. The narrator's head just begins to throb horribly, a grim little preview of the trouble that's on its way. After that intense climb, they finally descend into the town of Hor. For centuries, this place has been a key stop for pilgrims. But the reality our traveler finds is, well, it's jarringly different from the stories he's read. So you have these accounts from early travelers, like a Japanese monk back in 1900, who were so moved by how sacred the place felt that they literally burst into tears. But today, our narrator finds this grim, miserable town. No trees, just dust,
rocks, and piles of garbage, all sitting on the shore of Tibet's most revered lake. And all of this brings us right back to that guest house in Darchen, back to that night of terror. The next morning, Tsitan takes him to a local medical college. And the diagnosis for his near-death experience? It's surprisingly simple. He had a cold, and the altitude was making it 1,000,000 times worse. So the doctor prescribes a 5-day course of traditional Tibetan medicine. It comes in these little screws of paper, a brown powder for breakfast that tastes like cinnamon, and these small, round brown pellets for lunch and bedtime. He takes them. And that very night, he sleeps. Soundly. Like a log, not a dead man. So his health is back on track. His guide, Setan, sees that he's going to be okay and heads back to Lhasa. But this solves one problem only to create a brand new one. He's healthy now, sure, but he's also completely alone. See, he had arrived right at the beginning of the pilgrimage season, hoping he could just join a group of other travelers. But the town is empty. The trail might be clear, but the thought of doing such a profound journey by himself, especially after what he'd just been through, yeah, that was pretty daunting. So he waits. He sits in Darchen's only cafe, just thinking through his options, which are not great. And it's right there that a man wearing a wind cheater and Western-style glasses walks up and asks if he can share his table. The man's name is Norbu. Turns out he's a Tibetan academic who works in Beijing. And what's he doing way out here? The same thing. He's also there to perform the Kora. He's written papers about it for years, but he's never actually done it himself. When he hears our narrator's story, his eyes just light up, and a partnership is born. And this is where we have to leave them. Norbu's worried he's way too out of shape for the trek. Our narrator just recovered from a nasty bout of altitude sickness. You know, their chance meeting kind of shows us that sometimes a path forward appears just when you think you've hit a dead end. But it does leave us with one last question. Can this unlikely pair of library escapees actually conquer Mount Kailash?